Rhonda Johnson, Sharon Shaw, and Michelle Garvey. These are only 3 of the over 30 mostly young women between the ages of 12 and 25 years of age whose remains have been found in this area known as the Killing Field. The Killing Fields is a part of a 25-acre parcel of land known as the Calder Oil Fields, which is to my right behind me. Many bodies of female victims were dumped in this field over the course of about 30 years, from around 1972 all the way up till about 2001. Many unsolved murders, many Jane Does whose remains, bones, have been found in these fields for almost 30 years. And yet, through all the hard work of the League City Police Department, along with the FBI field office in Houston, Texas, to this day, all but one of those murders have actually been solved. Of all the victims murdered and found dumped out here, even though the MO was very similar to each person, and even the same areas in which the bodies were found, even the same look that a lot of the victims resembled each other, FBI profilers indicate that this is not the work of just one man, but of several different persons. Currently, I'm in the back of Magnolia Baptist Church here in League City, Texas. This is the site where some of the family members of the young ladies that were found murdered out here, they've made a couple memorials as I approach them right now. And I also want to touch on the missing persons aspect of this case. There's been more than a few young girls that fit the description of the victims of these gruesome murders that have gone missing, and their bodies have never been found. One of them was the name of Sandra Ramber. She was a 14-year-old Santa Fe, Texas teenager who was last seen at her home on October 26th of 1983. Disappeared off the face of the earth. Police in League City suspect that she was more than likely the victim of one of the individuals that is responsible for these murders. As I approach this area, you're going to see about 5 or so different memorials. This is Heidi Villarreal Fai. This one looks like the sun has laid claim to the printing on the metal. And here, Donna Prudhomme. And this last memorial right here, I want to show you, is that of Laura Lynn Miller. July 17th, 1968 to February 2nd, 1986. Laura Lynn Miller and Heidi were both the same residents of League City right here. And Laura's father, Tim, after all that was said and done, he ended up starting a search and rescue operation called Texas EquiSearch. Basically, they help in the search and recovery of missing children and adults throughout Texas and also, I believe, throughout the country. A rather gruesome detail about this case. Laura's father was out here putting together this memorial 10 days before Christmas. And as he was digging, he found a human finger. And it turned out to be his daughter's. A very gruesome and horrible discovery, to say the least. Your own daughter who came from you, and to find her remains in such a horrible fashion. Oftentimes, Mr. Miller would sit right here on one of these very benches right here, and he'd have a loaded 45. And he would almost sit out here and wait. He would just wait out here in the dark, 1 o'clock in the morning, drinking a beer, sitting in the absolute dark. He was doing this because he was waiting for his daughter's killer to arrive with yet another victim. And he would wait days on end, hours on end. And he did this on and off for years, waiting, hoping that the killer would come and that he can finally vanquish him and do away with him. But unfortunately, that day never came. Currently, we are at the Mount Olivet Catholic Cemetery here in Dickinson, Texas, about 3 miles from the Killing Fields Memorial Site. I'm here to show you the grave of Laura Lynn Miller. I would like to add to this case that Laura's dad, Tim Miller, who of course is the founder of the Texas EquiSearch organization, which helps people track and locate lost loved ones, doing ground and aerial search. He believes that he knows who is responsible for his daughter's murder, and he says that man's name is Clyde Hedrick. Now, Clyde Hedrick is currently serving 20 years in a prison here in Texas for the 1984 murder of Ellen Beeson. He claims that in 1984, him and Ellen were skinny dipping and she hit her head on a rock. Now, of course, when you're with your friend skinny dipping and she hits her head on a rock, well, what do you do when that happens? No, you don't go for help or call 911. You simply hide her body, and that way, you are not to blame for her death because it was an accident. What kind of logic is that? I don't know. Simply just a murderer. And Laura's boyfriend at the time can place Clyde in Laura's timeline because Clyde lived in the same neighborhood where Laura did, and he says that he would see him talking to her here and there in the neighborhood. But unfortunately, Clyde refuses to acknowledge him having anything to do with Laura's murder or the murders of any of the other women that were found in that general vicinity. And of course, Laura had been missing for 2 years, and police thought that she's just a runaway. It was a lot different back then than it is now. This is her grave right here. She might possibly have never been found, except there was a couple of kids riding dirt bikes and they smelled something dead, like it had died, and they went looking through the bushes and they found a human body. And when homicide detectives came to search the scene and kind of gather clues, that's when they found this girl's skeletal remains. Currently, I'm standing on Hobbs Road and West Main Street here in League City, Texas. I'm standing in front of a Valero gas station, and I want to talk about a very eerie similarity when it comes to the Laura Lynn Miller and Heidi Villarreal Fay situations. They both were last seen standing at this very gas station, and they were both last seen talking on a payphone that was at this very gas station. Now, you're not gonna be able to see, more than likely, any kind of remnants of a payphone, but I know a lot of younger people watch my channel, and a lot of you have not really seen many payphones around because of us just pretty much having cell phones and everyone being able to afford one. But back in 1986, when Laura was here at this gas station using the payphone, the only reason why she was here was because her family had just moved to town. They just moved into a new house, and the phone service wasn't up yet. So she came here to use the payphone to call her boyfriend. And this is where both of the ladies were last seen, right here. Currently, I'm about 25 miles to the south in Galveston, Texas. I'm walking down Avenue O. I'm across the street from Ball High School, and I want to talk about the disappearance and murders of two teenage girls that used to go to this high school. Best friends Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman, both 15 years of age, went to this high school and were last seen on November 15th, 1971. They were seen about a couple blocks away from here on Broadway getting into a white van. I believe from other classmates, interviews with detectives, that they had planned on hitchhiking up to Houston. And unfortunately, that was the last time they were ever seen. Their bodies were discovered 2 days later in a Texas City bayou, not very far from where the killing fields are located. Now, here's where this story gets a little bit convoluted, so bear with me when I explain this. Now, as of the recording of this video, their murders are unsolved, as are almost all but one of the murders of the young female victims that have been found in and around the killing fields. However, in 2011, a man by the name of Edward Harold Bell had wrote a letter from prison where he was currently being incarcerated for a 1978 murder of a man by the name of Larry Dickens. Now, he was in prison because he killed Larry Dickens while he was in his neighborhood. So this guy, Edward Harold Bell, he had pulled up to a neighborhood and started exposing himself to the children on the street. A woman called the police to report that there's a guy out there flashing kids, and she had a son who's Larry Dickens, by the way, whose story was retold on Unsolved Mysteries. She tells her son Larry, hey, there's a guy outside exposing himself. He goes outside to confront him. He grabs the keys to his truck, and the guy pulls out a gun and shoots him 4 times in the chest. Larry stumbles to his garage where his mother comes out screaming, and Edward Bell levels his .22 caliber pistol and shoots him in the head, and he falls and collapses and dies in his mother's arms. But before he died, he still had the strength to go and chase him into the street, but didn't quite make it to the street. He died in the driveway. And just as Edward Bell pulled out in his truck to escape the situation, police seen him coming down the street and on the opposite side, turned around and chased him. He crashes through some fence to a house, jumps out of his truck with his M1 carbine rifle. Luckily, it jammed, and police were able to apprehend him. So this guy, a sexual pervert, a creep, rapist, confesses in prison via a letter. He says, hey, I'm responsible for the murders of Maria Johnson and Debbie Ackerman, as well as 5 other missing girls that were eventually found murdered here in the Galveston area. However, later on, after subsequent interviews, not only with homicide detectives based out of the Galveston area, but also with the NBC local news affiliate, NBC, Edward Bell recanted his confession. And they asked him, well, if you're not guilty of the crime that you confessed in your letter, why did you write the letter? He says, oh, I was sad, I was depressed, I wanted to die, I wanted to be given a death sentence, but I had nothing to do with the murders. However, detectives strongly feel that not only is Edward Bell responsible for the murders of Debbie Ackerman and Maria Johnson and the 5 other girls that he also confessed to, they believe he is responsible for 11 altogether unsolved murders of young teenage girls and young women in the Galveston area. However, that will be a secret that will remain forever a secret, because last April of 2019, Edward Bell, 82 years of age, collapsed and died at the prison unit in Navasota, Texas. Some people say it's a very deadly secret, a secret that'll never be solved, and that he simply just took it to his grave. Currently, I'm at the Mount Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Galveston, only about 4 miles from the high school, and I'm approaching the grave of Debbie Ackerman. She's buried right here next to her father, Joseph. Her mother does not have a death date, so I don't know if she's still alive. She would be almost 97 years old. And as you can see, her picture right there. If she were still alive, she would have already, worked whatever job she was going to work at and been retired. Another victim claimed by, as of right now on the books, an unknown killer. She was found in the killing fields. Currently, I'm at the Forest Lawn Cemetery in Houston, Texas. Another case I want to talk about really quickly is that of 12-year-old Laura Smither. So on April 3rd of 1997, just before her mother was making breakfast, she had asked her if she can go outside jogging, be it at the time she was a ballerina, and being cognizant of her wanting to stay in shape, she just wanted to go out for a quick jog. Laura, 12 years old, left, and that was the last time her mother and father seen her. After she didn't come back from her jog, they called the police, and quickly a search and rescue started taking place. Tens of thousands of flyers, several hundred different volunteers, and thousands of man hours. Unfortunately, she was found April 20th of 1997 in a retention pond in Pasadena, Texas, which is a little bit outside of Houston and not very far from the Friendswood city where she was born and raised. And her murder has gone unsolved for many years until very recently. A man by the name of William Reese was serving a 60-year prison sentence in Texas for a kidnap and rape when a DNA profile hit on an unsolved murder of a 19-year-old woman named Tiffany Johnston up in Oklahoma. Oklahoma detectives quickly contacted the prisons out here and said that they had a DNA match. He was extradited to Oklahoma and was facing the death penalty. So, being the coward that he is to try to escape the death penalty, he quickly confessed to 3 murders that occurred here in Texas, one of them being Laura Smither. He confessed to that murder and the murders of Jessica Kane and Kelly Cox. And this is the grave here of Laura Smither. Currently, they are seeking the death penalty against them for the crime in Oklahoma. And there's been several different delays in the trial. And the final stop on this tour of the killing fields locations and the graves of the victims is this grave right here. I was actually here about a month and a half, 2 months ago. This is the grave of the Walker County Jane Doe. She's been dead for over 40 years and nobody has ever claimed her. I did a video about her. I'll put a link in the description box below. This is her grave. It simply says, unknown white female, died November 1st, 1980. She was seen October 30th and the 31st here in Huntsville, Texas. She had asked a couple people how to get to the Ellis unit that's in the prison here. And people say she was anywhere from 14 to 16 years old. A lot of people highly doubted that she was even 18 at best. She was found about 2 miles north of Huntsville, right off the I-45. She was found raped. She was strangled to death with a ligature, I believe. And no forensic evidence was recovered from her. No blood, no semen, nothing. And again, as I say now and I say before, this case has baffled me because somebody has a teenage daughter that never came home and they never called the police or nothing. This girl needs to be identified. She deserves more on her grave. She deserves her name on her grave, not unknown white female, and her death date. Nobody knows her name. There's been some question on her identity or her possible identity, but nobody knows. It's just one of those really baffling cases. Rest in peace to all the victims. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch up with you on the next vlog. Have a good day, guys. God bless, and peace out.